Hey everyone, this is Jeff Norris, the 2024 Alabama Teacher of the Year. I'm on a mission to amplify education in the state of Alabama and celebrate the power of specific teaching strategies and initiatives. As I travel around the state, visit teachers' classrooms, and meet new people with innovative ideas, I want to share these moments with you so we can all celebrate and grow better together. Education is my passion, and I want you to realize and embrace the opportunities we have to change lives each and every day. This is the power of a moment. All right, everybody, welcome to episode 3 of Power of a Moment with Jeff Norris. Today's episode is one of my favorites. We are going to invite our first classroom teacher to the stage today. This is, look at that. This is Nikki Burke. She teaches 3rd grade at Inverness Elementary School, and we're going to talk about the power of community today. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, and I was trying to think, Nikki, of some different people who really embrace the word community, people who are teachers who just go that extra step, just really trying to build the classroom community. We call them families sometimes, right? You hear all these different words for it in the buzz. And so she came to mind because Nikki was actually both of my children. I have a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old in a couple of weeks. So go figure. They were part of Nikki's class back in 3rd grade. And I know full well, both as an administrator and working with her, and then that's a parent perspective, that she really builds community with her kids, and it's an ongoing community. So I'm super excited about today. We're going to talk about some practical tips. We're just going to talk to each other and kind of catch up. And hopefully people who are listening will just get something from this or just get excited about another strategy to try. So welcome, Nikki Burke.
Well, thank you very much. It's so nice to be here and to be chatting with you. You know, I could do that all day, every day. So I hope, you don't have a time limit on this. It could go into evening.
That's about right. Listen, it happens all the time with me. I get started on something I'm excited about and just keep going. So we'll just see what happens. Well, I know I mentioned she teaches 3rd grade. So tell our listeners rather, like, how long you've been teaching 3rd grade and just a little bit more about yourself.
Okay. Well, this is the start of my 25th year of teaching 3rd grade, but my 26th year of teaching, period. My very first year was interesting. I moved from Illinois to Birmingham, Alabama. I was looking for a job, and they were hiring a science lab teacher. And now that I have a lot of years, and I can tell you, I'm not really a science kind of girl. Everything in the South scared me, the bugs, the weather. I mean, it was just, but I loved science that day, and I was ready to plug in, and I ended up falling in love with that job. But I fell in love with this school and the people in it and the community. And so, I've been here starting year 26.
And probably wouldn't change anything, right?
Oh, I wouldn't change any. I love it here. And honestly, I got brave that year when I was in the lab. Yeah. When they first took me in, my husband walked in with me, and I kind of teared up, and he's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "I'm scared of everything in this classroom." It's a lot of stuff. So here I am teaching. That's 3rd grade.
Yeah, well, and we're going to talk about something special about Inverness Elementary. It really is just one of those places you walk in and feel the environment shift when you go in there. And I mentioned Nikki's room is the same way. It's one that I enjoyed as an administrator visiting, and I was happy that my kids were, had you as a teacher. But just when we talk about the power of community, make sure we talk about this. We just talk about the building and your team that you surround yourself with, and on a classroom level, but also on a school level, because we both know this job is, I tell people, there's a fine line between exhaustion and exhilaration. So that community that's behind you, and whether it's at home or at school, is super important.
Absolutely. We're very blessed here at Inverness. I mean, again, I've been here for a long time. I'm one of the old ones here now, and I used to be the baby of the school. But, you hear how things have changed, and things have changed. However, the culture of the school has not. No matter what has happened through the pandemic, through just all the changes that we've gone through, it stays consistent at Inverness, and it's kind of a hidden gem. I mean, you know that because you were here, but I often tell people, because I would love to do a different grade, but I can't leave here. I mean, we're a K-3 school, and it's special at Inverness, and we are a true team. I have worked with some of the best administrators. I've had several assistants, colleagues in third grade, but even in the younger grades that I have just worked very closely with, our special area team. I mean, we are a family here, and we lean on each other, and it shows that we have a close relationship. And so I think that's incredibly important in a school building. You can accomplish so much when you have it.
Well, and as I'm touring around this year, so this year looks different for me when I get to visit different schools and not just in our district and not just people that I know. Of course, I'm leaning on you to kind of start off our podcast, but it's really interesting that that's not the case everywhere. But it's just what's best for everybody. So like, how do we, and maybe you and I can talk about this even now, like how do we replicate, let's just start on a school level. So before we even hit the classroom, so like, what are some things you can think about, like on a school level, how do we make every place as exciting as that? Like, I love hearing that you love going and that you love work every day. And, not every career gets to say that. So like, what do you think? Or like, what makes that happen? Is there like a secret sauce that
I think,
we can patent for
yeah.
people?
Well, yeah, I think sometimes you got to be intentional about it. It has to be a desire, and it can't be just a desire of one. One person can't
Right.
run a school. And even if you have the most wonderful administrator, you've got to have that team, but you got to have some people who are willing to start that. And it's contagious.
Mhm.
It really is. If you just let yourself kind of go and just realize it's not about you, it's not about what time you get out of here, what time you have to do it, what time you have to do duty, who has more duty, it's about this school and these children. And I think at Inverness, I don't know how all the people have fallen in. I mean, I think I know, but I'll keep
Yeah.
that for another topic. But
Uh-huh.
we just have so many people here that it truly is, it is just intentional. We all want the same thing. And it's so fun to know that about your school, because you know that the hard work and the blood and the sweat and the tears that you're putting into it, it's not being undone when they go to a special. It's not being undone when they go to the next grade level. Like, we're intentional about it. And I think that this is not the secret sauce. It's just intentional. And I think if you
Mhm.
can go to any school and just tell them, have a rally, talk about it, think about what is your goal, and then go for it. I mean, and that's what we've done. And again, we do have great leaders and always have had leaders that have encouraged us to do it.
Right.
But it's contagious. When you see great things happen, you want it more.
Well, we talk about when I'm presenting places, like I talk about the difference in engagement and empowerment, and I always use this. We're going to talk about classroom in a second, but as far as being an administrator goes, like buy-in is the engagement piece. Like, I love as a leader to say, here's our vision, come alongside us and support us, and like you
Yes.
mentioned, like this is something that's really powerful. And then going the step beyond that. So I think this is where the difference in a school that is. A successful school versus the school that really just has that community feel is that empowerment piece. So moving from buy-in to empowerment, where the teachers really and students, like, this is our school. We're,
Yes.
we're in this together. And one of the things I tell people is like words are powerful. I don't know. We did a podcast the other day on powerful words, and like we say it until it's true. So that we are the greatest school. We have the greatest teachers. We have the
Mhm.
greatest kids
Mhm.
until it just becomes part of the culture and part of that community. And so then the school is known as that's the everyday language we use to describe ourselves and our students in our school.
Well, and who wants to be the teachers who aren't on board? Like
Yeah. Oh
that would be
yeah.
kind of a lonely, sad place to
Yeah.
be. And so I
Yeah.
think that even if you come in and you're like, this kind of isn't what I feel, this isn't my jam, when you get around it, I think that people
Mhm.
are like, you know what? It really does make a difference when you have it. And
Yeah.
our school, we work so well together inside this building as educators, but we also lean on each other when we go through personal trauma, when life is life, and you have to have someone to share that with. And we really do lean on each other during
Yeah.
times of crisis. So it is about the students, but boy, is it about just having those friendships.
Right. Yeah. And uh, yeah, I mean, I don't know how else you can say that. Like, it really is true. Like uh, I mean, like research wise, think about like John Hattie. We hear about these practices, and he says the number one, indicator is collective teacher efficacy. So if we're putting, this research, this like a scientific name to what you're talking about, is this collective group of people coming together in a school building, maybe the adults who come together and they have this vision and they say, we know this is what could happen or what should happen, and we're going to work until it does happen. And we,
Yes.
we believe in our kids. These are our kids. And I love what you said. Like this is um, like we're all in this together. Not to overquote a High School Musical song, we'll start singing, but it's the truth. Like everybody has to have buy-in and be a piece of that,
Mhm.
puzzle. And so I think the other piece when we talk about still, since we haven't hit the classroom yet, let's talk like building connections with parents. And so as we talk about the education community, I feel like this is the piece that is it's hard. It requires, I'm in D1 with my four walls, and I can close my door and build my classroom community, which we'll talk about in a second. But when I open my doors, my kids leave me, like they have a much bigger community and I have a much bigger community. So talk about like engaging parents and just outside your classroom. Can you think of ways, how you build community and partnerships with those types of stakeholders?
Well, I know for me, one of the most important things, and it started back in 1990, in the 1900s, 1998, when I started, it was so excited for me to see them outside the walls. And so I was very proactive in going to different sporting events and different recitals and all the things. And it was to see my children do the things that they were doing, but it was also to build a connection with parents because, when you're here, you're the teacher, and sometimes they're just not real free with their speaking and they're just not real open. But when you're at a baseball game, people just start talking and you find out about their families, and then you can communicate and relate better. And so I think seeing people and talking to them outside the building is huge. But I also think that you need to be very understanding that not everybody lives the kind of life that we
Oh
live.
yeah.
And so you have to be understanding that when things aren't getting done or if something didn't get turned in, it might not be because they're just not responsible. There
Right.
could have been a tragedy. There could
Or the
have
parent
been.
doesn't care. We hear that sometimes. Oh, they just don't care about their child. Well,
Yes.
no, they might. Yeah.
And there are times when we have figured that out, that, and parents, they're human, they're adults, and they have pride, and sometimes they don't know to ask for help, or they don't
Mhm.
know what they don't know. And
Yeah.
so I think going in, I was raised in a community where we all kind of just treated each other the same. You tried really hard not, at least our family did, we tried not to judge people amongst anything. And so when I started this job, I really wanted that to be something that I did. It didn't matter. Just, figure out what it is and then plug them in. Because
Yeah.
sometimes, and there are some that don't want to be plugged in, and that does
Right.
happen. But
Right.
there's so many that do, they just don't know how. They don't know what to do. I mean, I've been
Mhm.
asked the question many times, like, what would you do when your child gets off the bus? I mean,
Mhm.
they ask for help, like, how do you set up a homework corner? What do
Right.
you do when it's time to read for 20 minutes? And they're being real when they're asking those questions.
Yeah. I love that. And letting parents know, and I'm in the secondary world now, so I've
Mhm.
lived elementary for a while, and now moving into the middle school and upper grade setting, we lose that piece. I do think elementary teachers, and maybe it comes from having a smaller group of students in your class and a smaller group of parents you need to interact with, but I think we lose that piece as our kids get older. And building independence in kids does not mean isolating
Mm,
them from their parents or removing the parents from the
yes.
situation. And so
Yes.
I definitely agree with you. I mean, I think both pieces are important. So the piece with that building connections with your families outside the four walls is so important, and those are the things that kids remember too, which is so funny, right? Like
Yes.
and you're the celebrity. You realize the influence you really have when you walk to the baseball field, and like you can't go more than 3 feet without having kids come up to you. So, and
Yes.
then yeah, just the second piece of like informing and including parents and instruction and making them know that they really are a part of that, because I do think that we hear independence and we think that means remove parents, and that's not necessarily the case.
No.
So I love that.
Well, and I
Well,
often on my emails, I don't do it every week, but on my weekly emails, it's one of the last things I'll say to the parents, is there anything I can do for you?
yeah, I love
You know,
that.
I'm giving them, I need this, this is due, this is coming, we're, this project. And so I try to remember at least every other week to say, how are you doing? Is there
I love
anything I
that.
can do for you?
Yeah.
Just because they may feel like they can't ask, and they can.
Well, and then the other thing, so we have, I'm sure we'll have listeners on here who have not been teaching quite as long as either of us. And so I feel
Forever.
confident saying that we both know the power of a phone call.
Mm,
And I think that a lot of newer teachers, and I have kids who are getting to that age where everything's a text or an
mhm.
email. And so we forget about this. It's not a face to face connection, but at least it is the voice to voice and like just that
Yes.
extra, you know, chance to talk to a parent, whether it's in person or whether it's on the phone. I think there's definitely some meaning behind that when you hear the
Absolutely.
passion behind somebody's voice and
Absolutely. And
yeah,
they don't know us, and they're entrusting their children with us. So why not have, a phone call with them and just let them hear your voice and the sincerity in what you're saying. And
mhm.
I will tell you, because I'm old, and I work with all these
Experienced.
young kids, and we have, a group text, and one of my colleagues next door, if I don't put an exclamation mark, she'll
Oh
text me,
yeah.
are you okay? Is everything okay? I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't know that was a thing. Like, I got to put
Yeah.
an exclamation to let you know that I'm okay.
Yes.
They, as these parents are younger, they don't always read things the way that we intend them. So, yeah, I think there is power in a phone call or a good old fashioned conference. Come
Yeah.
on in, let's sit and talk about your child. Those are my favorite,
Yeah.
because I feel like we are a team, and I need them to feel that being part of that team. I need them. This isn't
Yeah.
something you do just during the school day. This is
Right.
an ongoing thing.
Well, and this, so that really does is a good segue into the classroom. So let's talk some practical strategies for kids and in the classroom. So I know one thing. Uh, I know that my kids still talk about being a bookworm, so they will always be a bookworm. I think I told I tell people when I'm speaking, I always tell kids the first day, like, once a Norris kid, you're always a Norris kid, and I know that's true because I'm a Crump kid and a Scruggs kid and a Moody kid, and
Yes.
these are teachers that have poured into me, and I think having this identity as a community. So tell us about the bookworms and how that all came about, and tell us about the legacy of the
The
bookworms.
legacy of the bookworms. Well, I'm sad to say my very first year, those kids are bookworms in my
Here,
heart, but they weren't technically yet. I was still new and didn't know a whole lot of what I was
yeah,
doing with everything. And I knew I had a passion for books and reading then. But yeah, we just kind of grew into the bookworms. I think maybe my second year, we were all talking about, hey, let's go ahead and try to all of us have a theme, because a couple of the teachers did, several didn't. And I'm thinking, okay, BB, what could, I'm like, oh, bookworms. And boy, have I had a lot of fun with that.
yeah,
And they are, once they're a bookworm, they are always a bookworm. And I need them to know that, and I'm very transparent about it. I'm a little stalky sometimes,
yeah.
I like to go and see what they're doing at the high school when they're cheering or playing football or in the band. Like, I want to see
Yeah.
them grown up now. And that's so much fun.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. So one of the best things our district has done, I think, it's what probably the day that most teachers look forward to is that towards the end of the year we have this graduate walk, and so all of the high school seniors get to kind of go back to their elementary schools, intermediate school, and see all their teachers. And I know I'm sure you have these signs. They always like, all the bookworms, come by and see me, and like have the
Yes.
sign out, and it is fun like to see again that community just grows and grows and
It
grows.
does.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's amazing because my first set of bookworms, they're parents now. They're married, and their children are starting to come through the school, and so it's a lot of fun to keep up with them. And social media makes that easier, to kind of keep a handle on what
mhm,
everybody's doing. And there's a lot of pride in that, to be able
yeah,
to see them shine and know that you maybe just had that much, but
yeah.
you're a part of that, and I want to see them be successful and
Yeah.
be in the world doing their thing. It's
I
really
love that.
special.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so what about um so that's some positive ways. So I was thinking you and I like how does community help um you mentioned like when teachers support each other when things are hard or when things go bad or
Mhm.
just when things are tough. And so I was thinking about this the other day. I had and then maybe you can give us one of your stories, but I have a student who I taught in third grade my first year. Again, that was a hard. Those are not those success stories. Like that's my as a teacher. Like I wish I could go back and do a redo. But I
Yeah.
had the student in third grade, and then 2 years later, I taught fifth grade, and so I kind of looped up. And he was one of the kids I had again in fifth grade, and his family. It would have been the next. It would have been the year after that. He was very quiet. He didn't, he's a tough little boy. Didn't show his emotions. Didn't really. He was not a hugger. He wasn't that kid. And so I kind of wondered, am I breaking through? Like, is he part of my
Mhm.
gang? How does this
Mhm.
work? When the year after that, maybe even 2 years after I had him in fifth grade, his dad passed away. And so they were having the funeral. And so his mom reached out and she was like, you're the only person he's asked, to come to the funeral. Like, he wants you to be there. And I was just like reliving this moment, like where, like we saw each other at the funeral. Like, he gave me a huge hug. We just kind of cried together, and it was, I mean, it's an awful situation, but it was that physical reminder that, like, I mean, we say we're family, but like that we really are. And so just that power, I talk about the power of moments all the time, and that's what this
Yes.
podcast is called. So like that moment to me was impactful, and also just that representation that, hey, we formed that connection. Like, that was because something happened in that classroom that was special, and not every career gets to have that opportunity. um,
Absolutely.
yeah, I don't know, can you think of any stories, like anything where community really played a kind of big part in a situation?
Yes. Before I get there, when I first started teaching and I was in that discovery lab, I had a kindergarten teacher who taught across the way, and Dee Patterson. I don't know. Did you work with Dee?
Yeah, I
Dee
know the name.
Patterson had like this magical gift. I thought she had sprinkles that she put on her kids because the love was so deep in that room. And I think the whole world needs to hear, if you're in education, this was the best advice I got as a young teacher. And she said, because I asked her, I'm like, how in the world is your class the way? She could ask them to do anything and they did it with a joyful heart. I
Mm.
mean, they were amazing. And she said, you have to love your students. I'm like, well, I love kids. That's why I'm in
Yeah.
education. And she said, no, you have to love your kids and they know when you don't.
Hmm.
And so, when you're talking about this student who you didn't know that you were making that, he knew you loved him.
You're
And
right.
so that was why he wanted you there and wanted you to be involved in that terrible day, but he
Hmm.
needed you to be there because
Right.
he knew you loved him.
Yeah.
And I think that teachers sometimes forget kids are so smart.
Hmm.
We kind of treat them like they're just these little people, but they're very smart and they know, and you have to mean it. And sometimes, there
Yes.
are days when you're like, whoo,
Yep.
okay, we're going to get through this day. But
Yeah.
you have to love them. So
I love
yes,
that.
I've had a lot of experiences through the years where I feel
Hmm.
like, I've gone to watch my students get married, where they invited me I'm going to start getting emotional,
Yeah.
to go to their wedding, and I'm thinking, I had them in at 8 years old and, they're late 20s and they still remember me to come to their wedding.
Yeah.
And then when I go and I run into, 50 other students that I taught while I was there, and it just, you feel like you did something,
Hmm.
and you feel like you made a connection and they made a connection with you, and that's family. I
Hmm.
mean, it just is. And it's so incredibly important for us as teachers to remember that we need to build this, because for a lot of them, it's not, we're not their only family. We're not but for some of them, it may be.
Yeah.
We're their people.
So how do you, I guess, like, can you give, like, do you have any practical, like, can you think of specific ways? And I have a couple too, but I mean, can you think of anything specifically that you do for teachers who are listening to build that community within your classroom?
The first thing is I tell them, when on the very first day of school, that it was so boring in my classroom over the summer as I'm putting it together and getting it ready, and my classroom, I'm like, but it's no longer my classroom. This isn't me, this isn't mine, this is
Mhm.
ours. So I'll involve them in making decisions. Do you feel like we need to do this, or do you feel like we need to do that? And I give them ownership within the classroom. I kind of give them free reign of the classroom. I don't
Mhm.
let them go through my desk necessarily, but I try to put everything a child would need as a third grader to kind of take care of themselves, like
Mhm.
Band-Aids and hand sanitizer. And I'm looking over at my little card over there, but I try to make everything accessible so that they feel comfortable moving about their home and getting what they need to be successful. So if whiteboard is what they need, well, you don't ask me that. This is our house. If you're using it to be productive, you just go get it, and I think they have to feel like this really is their space too, that they're not just visiting me,
I love that.
like they're not just hanging out for a year in my classroom. No, this is ours. And they'll help me make changes. They'll say, I don't really like where that is because it's hard to see. Okay, what can we do different? And I think that that's one of the easiest things you can do is just let them be a part of it. And when they feel ownership, well, then it's more fun to be a part of it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. But that and just showing that mutual respect, and when I make mistakes, I don't try to hide it. I don't try to,
I
give
love
an
that.
I'm just like, y'all, I am so human and I am
Mhm.
so sorry that I just messed that up. But, we'll fix it. And, we talk about how they're human and how they can fix it. And they're 8. They're not going to
Yeah,
do everything perfectly, and I tell
yeah.
them that. I'm like, y'all, you're going to make mistakes and that's okay.
Mhm.
But, number one, let's always be truthful. Let's own what we do and let's figure out how we're going to fix it. And
I
then let's
love
try
that.
not to do it again. But,
Yeah. What
just,
about sorry to interrupt. What about
no,
like
you're right.
connecting with each other? So I know it seems not maybe not easier, but there is an element of control. Like when I think about my interactions with kids. So
Mhm.
how do we get kids, or can you think of examples like building community between students, or can you think of anything that you
One
know?
of the I've had a student with alopecia, and this child wore a ball cap to school, and I saw the panic when the ball cap got knocked over because he had kind of some patches and had chosen to just remove the rest of the hair, and the kids hadn't seen it, and so he was real panicky, and it kind of broke my heart. So I went on and I started looking for books on alopecia because you can find a book on about anything for children.
Uh-huh.
And there was a child, the child on the book looks almost identical to the child in the classroom, which was
Mhm.
just even more special. So I
Mhm.
bought the book, reached out to mom, and I sent it home. And I said, would you please read this? I would love to share this with the class. And so the little boy and I read it together and we talked about it. And then he gave me permission and mom gave me permission to read it to the classroom. Well, the kids had no idea that his head was not intentional, that way they just thought that's what he just liked to do. And some of them would give him a hard time. And they just kind of poured around him. And man, I didn't know. And I know on the playground, somebody was giving him grief about it one day. And one of my students stood up for him and said, hey, he has alopecia.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things that you have to understand and know each other to be able to become that family. We can't just stay separated. We've got to come together and really promote the kids being there as a unit. They're a family.
Yeah. I
So I
love
think
that.
that's super important.
We call in my classroom we call it the difference between being a critic and a critical friend.
Oh,
Like for 12-year-olds. So like we say, a critic is trying to find your flaws. A critical friend is trying to make you better.
yes,
A critic brings you down, and a critical friend brings you up and uplifts you. And so I think that the more we can give kids language to use, and I know you love good books, so like the more we can show them and teach them ways to talk to each other and talk about each other. And I think kids they regress to the norm or to the mean, right? So like if we have high expectations, this is our classroom, like you mentioned, this is our these are our people. We're bookworms for life.
right,
Like this is how we
yes,
treat other bookworms. This is what we're known for. Like they live up to those expectations, and I think
they do.
that's pretty
Well,
powerful.
I'm sorry. And if you tell them, that this is a world that you can't control a whole lot of it, but we've got a small space here, and this is our safe place. We come here, we don't name call, we aren't unkind.
Mhm.
You can say things to people without being unkind about it. And so we practice that. I mean, I have a book, Do Unto Otters,
Oh
and it's
yeah.
a book about respect. And we just talk about how are ways we can do it. Each kindness, a great
Mhm.
book for thinking about how you treat people and you don't always get the opportunity to fix it.
Yeah.
And so there are books out there that really help do that. And then you just kind of bring it into your own home and what are we going to do about that? How are
Yeah.
we going to become these people?
I love that. Well, you give me some little nuggets of wisdom. I love hearing this, and hopefully, just telling people, the power of like building this community and how it's ongoing and these ever reaching and everlasting effects. And so I know that my wife and I are very blessed to have had Miss Burke as our kids teacher, and they're bookworms, and they still take pride in calling themselves bookworms, and
Thank
they're
you.
still yours. So
They are mine.
they're there. Yeah, so I love that, and I just appreciate you being on here and sharing some of your wisdom with us. So I hope you have a fantastic rest of your year,
Thank you very
and
much.
continue doing what you do because it's great stuff.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate it. It's an honor. Thank you.